On behalf of the Arizona SBDC Small Business Development Center, I'd like to welcome you to our session, Scams and Tax-Related Identity Theft for Individuals and Business. As I'm sure all of you are aware, right, it's in the news of all the different cyber attacks that are happening, many different vulnerabilities, whether you're an individual or a business. So today we're going to address some of those areas, just looking at what are some of those scams that are out there, how to identify them, and then if you identify them, how to report them. So we're very happy to have Lisa Novack here from the IRS. She's going to take us through our content this morning. So again, welcome, and we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Paula Whittekund. I am the Arizona SBDC Network Training Manager. I'll be your host for today. And then joining me as co-host is Esmeralda Estrada. Esmeralda is going to help us keep an eye on the Q&A and discussions and keeping track of our time this morning. So again, please, if you have questions, make sure to enter them into the Q&A and we'll address them as we're moving through the content. Before I turn things over to Lisa, I'd like to give just a very, very brief introduction to the Small Business Development Center. Some of you may be familiar with the SBDC, some of you may be new to the SBDC. But we are an organization that we provide no-fee small business counseling. Whether you're a small business just starting out with that idea and not quite sure where to go with that, or maybe you're the first year in, experiencing some growth and need some help, or maybe you're that business that's been around for several years but looking to grow, we can help you with your business development needs. Again, it's confidential, one-on-one, no-fee counseling. Many different areas, as you see on the screen, whether you're looking to develop a business plan, get access to capital, needing some financial education, learning how to run your business and make sure it's profitable so that you can grow that business. Marketing, we have experts in export, government contracting, veterans assistance, and so on, many different areas beyond what is just shown here. At the end of our session today, I'll share a bit more information about how to access and request our no-fee counseling. But as you see on the map there, we are located across the state of Arizona. And so if you're a small business anywhere in Arizona, there will be an SBDC center and resources close by to assist you. With that, I would like to turn it over to Lisa Novack. Welcome, Lisa. Lisa is the Senior Stakeholder Liaison with the IRS Communication Liaison Outreach Group, and she is going to take us through our content this morning. Lisa, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Paula. And I want to extend a great thanks to the SBDC Network for inviting us to share this information with you. And I thank you all for joining us today as well. You know, I want to welcome you to National Tax Security Awareness Week. I don't know if you all knew that that was such a thing. IRS has been doing this for about, 8 or 9 years. And because the holidays are quickly approaching, you know, we want to warn people about taking some extra steps right now to protect your financial and tax information. You know, around this time of year, people really face a heightened risk in coming months of, you know, the fraudsters taking advantage of the holiday season to trick people into sharing sensitive personal information, either by email or text message or online. You know, and the identity thieves can use that information to try to file tax returns and steal refunds. So that's one of the reasons why we are involved in this messaging. So today I'm going to focus mostly on individual identity theft, and then we'll talk a little bit about business identity theft and what you can do to kind of keep your business safe from data breaches and from your identity theft. So the IRS has been working with state tax agencies and the tax community, including like the tax software companies and tax professional organizations and folks like that. They work in partnership to combat identity theft, refund fraud, in order to protect all of our taxpayers. You know, these members of the Security Summit have actually made some really great progress in the fight against identity theft and stolen identity refund fraud. But of course, there's always more work to do, and we need your help to do it. So we need everyone to do everything possible to protect your sensitive, personally identifiable information and data. This National Tech Security Awareness Week, we do this every year. Usually it falls the Monday after Thanksgiving, which is typically Cyber Monday. So we try to get messaging out to people to make sure that they're watching out for their personally identifiable information when they're out there shopping on Cyber Monday. Although I'm thinking we need to move it even earlier, since all these Black Friday deals happen online much earlier now. But now that the holidays are here and tax season is approaching, we want people to know about the extra steps that they need to take to protect their information. All right, so, the information that I'm going to talk about today is mostly related to the tax administration end of it, but a lot of this information is going to apply across the board to protect your information anywhere, not just for tax-related issues. Because fighting fraud is actually a continuous activity for the IRS, but it's because the scammers really evolve as technology evolves. They've got a lot of time on their hands to figure it out. And so usually as the IRS kind of uncovers some of these scams and plugs these holes, another one starts gushing because they've had time to come up with some new processes on how they're going to work the system. And you know what, I'm going to shut my camera off right now just because I think it interferes with some of my slides here. So I'm going to stop my video. Okay. So really, we're trying to focus on prevention, and we're constantly working with those partners to provide information that's going to help you recognize and avoid scams. Just a little bit of history, tax-related identity theft started out as kind of a petty crime. It was unorganized criminals, dishonest tax return preparers, but it actually evolved into a major enterprise. And it's now funded by these highly technical national and international crime syndicates. So it's become kind of a big business for the bad guys. The IRS actually sees thousands of fraudulent tax scams every year. And of course, these scams do tend to rise during tax season and times of crisis, like during the pandemic. So one thing IRS does to alert taxpayers is we publish an annual list called the Dirty Dozen. And this is the top 12 tax scams that IRS sees each year. So a lot of times they're repetitive from year to year, but we always find a new one to add, a new one or two to add to the list. So you can always go in and view that list on irs.gov. You could go to our homepage and search Dirty Dozen, and you'll be able to see, the top 12 scams that IRS has identified. But on this slide, here's some of those scams that are listed. First up is the email phishing and malware scams. And I think we're probably all aware of like phishing, the email scams right now. But there's always a new twist. As I said, these guys are evolving and coming up with new ideas on how to do things. So we warn you to watch out for fake emails that look like official communications from the IRS or even other tax agencies like the Arizona Department of Revenue. These emails are often phishing schemes that are designed to trick you into providing your login credentials or your bank account number and your passwords. So don't click on any of the links in these emails. Usually you're taken to sites that are designed to look like the official website. And of course, they just want to obtain your personal information that can be used to file false tax returns or even access to your financial accounts. So I think that this is one of those discussions, every time I give this presentation, I encourage people to take this message home and talk to your family and your friends about it, especially if you have teenagers, if you have elderly parents or grandparents. Make sure that they're aware of some of these things and some of these warning signs that I'm giving you today. I made the mistake. I give this presentation all the time, and I didn't talk to my mother about these things. And so take it from me, it's really important to have that discussion. Next up, we see a lot of fake charities. A lot of the times these criminals exploit natural disasters, other situations like the pandemic. We saw a lot of fake charities pop up during that time. So they're going to set up fake charities to trickle into making donations or providing their personal financial information. So you always want to be cautious when you're working with a charity. You want to make sure that they are a recognized charity and not give your money or your information to something that is not. Another thing you need to watch out for is threatening phone calls. A lot of times these scammers call taxpayers and impersonate the IRS. It happens a lot around tax season. They claim to be IRS employees, but they use these aggressive tactics and threats to trick people into paying fake IRS debts. And a lot of times they'll use fake names and fake badge numbers, but they might already know some details about you, so the call seems kind of legitimate. The other thing they can do is they can alter the caller ID to make it look like it's the IRS calling. So we don't want you to fall for that. Just to give you a couple of examples of the types of calls that we've heard of. A lot of times victims are told that they owe money to the IRS. So this phone call, somebody calls and says, "This is the IRS, you owe us thousands and thousands of dollars. You have to pay this immediately. Otherwise we're going to call the police and have you arrested." They usually ask for the payments on a preloaded debit card or a wire transfer. So keep in mind, the IRS does not accept payments on preloaded cards or wire transfers, nor do we threaten you, with jail or something like that. Also, another example would be victims might be told they have a refund due. The caller will try to trick you into sharing your bank account number so that, they can send the refund to you. This call is fake. The refund is fake. Don't get tricked into providing your personal bank account number, especially over the phone or through email. We're not going to call you and tell you you have a refund due. There's too many taxpayers and not enough IRS employees to call people and let them know that they have a refund due. Most of the time we do generate letters when we're trying to contact people, but I'll get into a little bit more about that later. But just keep in mind, these scammers are constantly changing their tactics. These criminals that are impersonating IRS agents really remain a major threat to taxpayers, so everyone needs to be alert. There's also a number of scams centered around refund theft. Like I said, most of the refund fraud stems from identity theft. So they're going to take your data and try to file false tax returns and claim fraudulent refunds. Another thing to know is non-English speakers are often targets. So they try to target these people with limited English proficiency based on the foreign sounding last names. And they're gonna, when they make the call, they're gonna threaten to bring in the local police, immigration officers, or other law enforcement to have them arrested for not paying. So keep that in mind too. If it sounds a little bit odd or suspicious, it probably is. And we do warn people, if you get a call from the IRS and you're not sure, you haven't gotten letters from the IRS to let you know that, there's something going on, you can tell them, I'm going to hang up and I'm going to call the main number for IRS. And don't call a number they give you. You want to look it up online, make sure that you call the IRS because they can tell you if there's some kind of action going on. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And then finally, another sign is we do have some bad return preparers out there. Dishonest preparers pop up every filing season. They promise inflated refunds by allowing you to claim fake tax credits like education credits or the earned income tax credit. So one way to find out, to make sure that you have a recognized tax return preparer that has the qualifications, you can go to irs.gov and search for the return preparer directory for tips on choosing a qualified return preparer. All right, so, a lot of the data thefts begin with an email phishing scam. And, these are one of the most common online threats. So you want to make sure that you're aware of the signs and you know what to do when you receive them. So here's some ways to spot a phishing attack. These emails that come into your inbox will look authentic. It might match that style that's used by your company or even an external business like a bank. But you want to keep an eye out for emails requesting personal information. So things like banking details or login credentials. If you think the email isn't genuine, just stop. Don't click on any of the links. Don't provide any of the information they ask. Don't respond to it even. You can always search online for the organization's information and contact them directly. A lot of times they come from fake addresses that appear to be genuine. Excuse me, the scammers can mask the email address, or sometimes they might change like one or two characters of a known company. So if you're only glancing at that email address, it might look real. So a lot of times you might want to take a moment and just hover your mouse over the address to examine it. And that could tell you if it's from a legitimate source or not. I'll give you an example. So yesterday I was checking my emails on my phone and I saw an email from Chase Bank. And it said something about how I needed to verify this information. And so I could have clicked the link to go right to their site. And I thought, this is kind of unusual. So I hovered my, I hovered my mouse over the email address. And it did appear to be a Chase email because it had that information in there. But I decided that I would go directly to my Chase account and make sure there weren't any messages there. And there weren't. So I don't believe that that would be a legitimate email message. So that's one example of things. The other thing that I have to laugh about is when I get messages from Wells Fargo Bank about, my accounts being suspended or things like that. I don't even bank with Wells Fargo. So, but that's part of the whole phishing scheme. They just throw that net out there and see who they can catch. Excuse me. Another clue that it might be a phishing email is they're usually poorly written. And I don't understand this at all. But if you receive an unexpected email from a company, but it's got a lot of mistakes in it, that's a pretty strong indicator that the email is a phishing email. I guess they don't have spell check, when they're sending out phishing emails. I'm not really sure, but, take a look at that. You also want to make sure you're suspicious anytime you get an unexpected email with an attachment. If you click on that attachment, it could install malicious software on your computer or on your network. Even if you think an attachment is genuine, it's really good practice to scan it first using an antivirus software. Excuse me, the messages in phishing emails are often designed to make you panic. So for example, that email might claim that your account was compromised and you need to provide your name and password to verify your account. And that's a pretty common tactic, and it works because you're more likely to respond quickly without thinking if that situation seems urgent. So again, you just want to stop and think twice before responding. And if you're unsure, again, contact that company directly to see if it's a legitimate message. All right, so just, some little ideas here to prevent online identity theft. Make sure you're not responding to any suspicious emails, whether they're from the IRS or not, but emails, text, faxes, social media. We do not contact you through these venues. We do not use email, text, social media to contact taxpayers. Make sure that you are securing your computer using firewalls and antivirus software and anti-spam software and things like that. Make sure you're using strong passwords at all times and use different passwords for different systems. You want to be backing up your critical personal information. You want to limit the personal information you provide on social media. You've probably all heard about those scam calls where a grandparent gets a call from their grandchild who's in Mexico and has been arrested, and they need to wire $5,000 down there to get him out of jail. A lot of times they get that information off of your social media. They can gather enough of your information to learn enough about your life that they could scam you. So keep that in mind as well. There's several different resources you could use, and we'll talk a little bit more about some as we go through, but there's onguardonline.gov. IRS has irs.gov/ID theft. And then there's also staysafeonline.org. And so these are resources that you can access on your own to take a look at, some ideas and some information. You can share it with your family, again, teenagers, parents, grandparents, that kind of thing. So keep that in mind as well.
Lisa, this is Paula. We had a comment. Just a comment. She says, I had an email sent to me from my director. It looked real and wanted me to open an attachment. Could you kind of speak to that type of a scam on email?
So, yeah, that is pretty common. And I'm assuming that when you say it came from your director, this is a business-related type thing. And I was going to talk to you when we get to the business section about, sometimes they pretend to be like a high-level executive or something along those lines from your company to trick you and to get you to do things urgently, in a moment of panic. And so you really need to be on guard about that. And that's one of the things you need to talk to your staff and your employees about. But, if you click on an attachment like that, not thinking, it could, there could install malware on your system and that kind of thing. So you have to be really, really cautious. And, I think one of the reasons behind them doing that is if you're getting a contact from a high-level executive in your company, you don't want to let them down. You don't want to get in trouble by not acting as quickly as possible. So, and you also don't want to question them as to why. But you really want to just stop and think twice again about what you're doing and why they're asking you that. And maybe go to somebody else and say, does this make sense, before you actually follow through with what they're asking you to do.
And she did say it was a virus. So yeah, thank you, Lisa.
Okay, thanks. All right. So, as I said, scammers will be able to use your information to try to electronically file a fraudulent return before you file your own return. In most cases, you're not going to be aware that there's been tax-related identity theft until you try to electronically file your own return. And when that happens, it's going to reject because the IRS system already shows a return that was filed for that Social Security number. So if you're unable to file electronically because someone else has already filed under your tax identification number, you're going to need to mail a paper return to the IRS, and you would need to attach the form 14039 Identity Theft Affidavit. And that form is available on irs.gov. What'll happen then is IRS is going to place your case into what's called the Identity Theft Victim Assistance Program. They'll research and try to resolve the case. They'll verify your identity, and they'll issue any legitimate refund and place you into what's called the Identity Protection Personal Identification Number Program. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a slide. Another way that you could figure that you might have been a victim of identity theft is the IRS identifies returns that could potentially be fraudulent. So if the IRS believes that a return is fraudulent and that you could potentially be a victim of ID theft, we're going to send a letter advising you that we have a questionable return with your identifying information on it, and that letter is going to ask if that return is yours. If it is your return, we're going to ask you to verify your identity, and it could be by phone, online, or even in person. It just kind of depends on the degree of risk that determines the method you'll use to verify. Once you verify, then we can release the legitimate tax refund to you. Now, if you advise us that the return isn't yours, we're going to clear out your tax account so that we'll be able to accept a paper return from you. And in this case, then there's no need to file that identity theft affidavit because we already know that you're a victim.
Hi, Lisa. We have another question in the chat. So not IRS related, but several checking and savings accounts have been opened in my name, but never get funded. Do you have any idea if locking my credit will solve this?
Because several accounts were open in your name and you want to know if blocking your credit would stop that?
Yeah, that was it.
I do not have a clear answer to that. I'm not really sure. I don't think so, because I don't think you need credit to open a bank account, but I could be wrong. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Federal Trade Commission website, and that might be a place where you might be able to go to get some more information. They have a lot of great information about, identity theft and that kind of thing.
All right, thank you.
All right. So another sign of tax-related identity theft is you might receive a notice stating that you owe additional tax, or that there's been some collection action taken, and you say, well, I didn't file a tax return that year. So that's another sign of identity theft. You really need to just immediately respond to that notice using the contact information that are on that page. There's also instances where people might use your Social Security number with employers in order to obtain jobs, or they might even apply for and receive taxable benefits like unemployment compensation. And that happened a lot during the pandemic, when unemployment compensation was so lucrative for people. There was a lot of fraud in that area. So what happens is, that employer or the agency reports the income or taxable benefits to the IRS, and then we'll compare it to what's on your return. And we'll say, oops, they forgot to include this information. So we're going to send you a notice for the additional taxes that are due because the income appears unreported. But because it really wasn't you that received that, you're going to need to immediately respond using the contact information in the notice. And you also really need to notify that employer or the agency that issued that information return, and explain to them that someone stole your identity and that you don't work for that employer or you didn't apply for the benefits. Okay, so if you do receive some type of email or social media attempt that appears to be from the IRS or some organization closely linked to the IRS, you should forward that message to phishing@irs.gov, and that's phishing with a PH. Also, if you are a victim of identity theft, you can use the Federal Trade Commission's one-stop resource, and this is for identity theft reporting and recovery, and that's at identitytheft.gov. In some cases, if you are scammed out of like a refund. If somebody stole your refund, something along those lines, you could contact the Treasury Department's Inspector General office. Okay, so I mentioned the identity protection PIN number, and this is where, IRS enrolled you into the identity protection PIN program because you've been identified as a victim of identity theft. The IP PIN actually protects taxpayers' accounts from fraudulent filings. Now, this is something that they have actually opened up to everyone and anyone who wants further protection from tax-related identity theft. So an IP PIN is a 6-digit number that prevents someone else filing a tax return using your Social Security number or your individual tax identification number. This kind of, think of it like multi-factor authentication. Like when you sign into your bank account and then they send a PIN to your cell phone. This is kind of the same thing. You're going to use this IP PIN when you file your return. If you try to electronically file the return without a PIN, it's going to reject. Or if you use the incorrect PIN, it will reject that return and you'll have to file a paper return. If you file a paper return without the correct PIN, it'll just undergo some additional scrutiny and it might take a little bit longer to get your refund. But it's really a good protection for you to avoid having this happen to you at all. So we're really encouraging people. This has been around for about the last 10 years or so. We started just providing the IP PINs to people who were verified victims of tax-related identity theft. But in January of 2021, the IRS opened it up to all taxpayers to opt into that program. So hopefully you will consider doing this. There is a one-time registration process involved in it. It's through the IRS online account that you can access by going to irs.gov. Your IP PIN is only going to be known to you and the IRS. You can provide it to your tax return preparer when they get ready to file your return for you. Every January, you would get a new IP PIN that's valid for the entire calendar year. And so all you have to do is enter that 6-digit number when you're electronically filing. The software will prompt you for that figure. Or if you're filing a paper return, you put it on the signature line when you sign the return. So it's pretty simple to use. Once you get through the verification process, through your online account, you're in, and you can go back every year and just get your new IP PIN. Some important reminders about the PIN. So, of course, it's going to protect your federal tax account from identity theft. It is, as I said, valid for 1 calendar year. Each year, a new PIN is generated for your account. You do have to use it when filing any federal returns during the year, including prior year returns. So, for example, when you're going to file your 2023 return next year, you get your IP PIN, but you didn't file your 2022 return yet either. You're going to use that same IP PIN for both your 2022 and 2023 returns that you file in 2024. Again, we discourage you from sharing your IP PIN with anyone other than your tax return preparer. And notice again, it says at the time of filing. So you want to wait until they get it all prepared and ready for you to sign before you give them the IP PIN. Now, if you do have problems enrolling online, there are some alternatives for you to be able to still get an IP PIN. You can file a paper form 15227, which is an application for an IP PIN, or you can go into a taxpayer assistance office in person. And, at that point, you can verify your identity and you can apply for your PIN there in person. One thing to keep in mind, and this is for everybody, not just for IP PIN people, but if you move, part of your moving package should be updating your address with the IRS. And you can do that by filing Form 8822, change of address. And it is pretty important, especially because of this, potential identity thing. But even with the IP PIN program, make sure you're keeping your address updated with IRS. If you want to learn more about the IP PIN, you can go to irs.gov and search IP PIN. We also have a publication online, which is Pub 5547. That'll give you additional details about that IP PIN. All right, so again, just to emphasize, we don't want you to share your IP PIN with anyone other than your trusted tax provider. If you opt into the program through the online tool, you have to return to irs.gov beginning January of each year to get the new IP PIN. If you do forget or lose your IP PIN, you can always go back to the online tool to recover it. If it's obtained by a paper application, you will be mailed a new IP PIN around December to begin using in the next calendar year. So again, that's another reason why it's important to keep your address updated. All right, so let's kind of change our focus to business. So we do have some quick security tips. And just to kind of back up a little bit, because this is National Tax Security Awareness Week, what that means, IRS issues new news releases every day of the week that are focused primarily on tax security awareness. And some of these tips that I'm going over with you, those come out in a news release each day. I think today's news release focused on the IP PIN and provided all sorts of information about that. So that's one of the things that we're focusing on. We also issue tips about businesses and things like that. So just to let you know that that's part of what National Tax Security Awareness Week is.
Hi, Lisa.
But yeah.
Sorry, question. If we do receive any of these communications from the IRS that suggest we are victims of fraud, how do we contact the IRS, and whom at the IRS can we work with to get it resolved?
So there will be a contact number on the notice that you get. And so that's the number that you will call, and you will work with, whoever answers at that time.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
And Lisa, we have one other question. It's fairly long, so let me see if I can truncate it a little bit, but it's related to the PIN and contacting the IRS. So basically, this person is saying they have a 20-year history of chronic ID theft. They've taken the steps to file with FTC, police reports, contacting the IRS, Social Security, protective measures on their part. The IRS notified them that someone's using this Social Security number for employment, but the IRS stated no action was needed. They've sent certified letters with no response, and they need to speak to someone. Their CPA is working to establish a PIN to no avail. Can you help? What might you suggest for this person who is trying to get in touch with the IRS?
Let me give you my email address, and you can send me, whoever submitted this chat can send me an email with the details, and I'll look into it and I'll respond to you. So I'm going to put my email address in the chat.
Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, that went to Esmeralda. Hang on, I need to send it to everyone. Oh, nope, I can't send it to everyone. I can only send it to you guys.
I could put it in the chat, no worries.
Okay, thanks, Esmeralda.
You're welcome.
All right. So just a little bit of information here. You know, more than 70% of the cyber attacks are aimed at businesses with 100 or fewer employees. So if you think an attack can't happen to you, it can. Because, you know, the criminals are going to assume that small businesses don't really have the security protections for their systems that larger businesses do. So, you know, some of the things that they target might be if you keep credit card information online, or even business identity information or your employee identity information. Those are the things that they're targeting. So keep all of that in mind. You know, IRS highly recommends that small business owners review and implement recommendations from the Federal Trade Commission. They have what's called Cybersecurity for Small Business on their website at ftc.gov, and it gives you some really great, easy to understand tips for small businesses. So I really encourage you guys to do a little bit of homework and check that out. Here is what the resource looks like on their website. So if you go to ftc.gov, GV, and enter cybersecurity for small business in the search box, you'll find all of these resources there for you. So, you know, a little bit of homework for you to do, but hopefully that'll keep you safe. So just as a reminder, here's some of the basics that are recommended by the FTC. You want to make sure that you're protecting your file. You want to keep your security software updated. This includes any apps or web browsers, things like operating systems. And make sure that you're setting your updates to happen automatically. Don't rely on your memory to, you know, make sure everything's getting updated. You want to make sure to secure important files. Back up important files offline. Don't do them online or on an external hard drive, or maybe even into the cloud, but make sure that you're also storing your paper files securely too. You know, back in the day, the bad guys used to break into people's offices and steal, you know, paper files and things like that. Then as technology evolved, they were able to break into systems to steal the information. Now they're kind of going back to breaking into offices to get paper files and your computers, and they're just taking the computer. So you just need to be really, really cautious and make sure that you've got some backups. You want to make sure that you've got strong passwords on all of your devices. That includes laptops, tablets, smartphones, and encrypt your devices that contain sensitive personal information. You also want to make sure you're using multi-factor authentication to access areas of your network that have sensitive information. You know, that's just that extra step, that extra protection for you. And then make sure you have a security plan of some kind. You know, it's kind of like an insurance policy if you have a security plan. FTC has great resources that talk about potential data breaches, and we warn tax preparers about this all the time. You want to make sure you have your plan in place in case you ever do experience a data breach, because the first thing you're going to do is panic when it does happen. But if you have a plan kind of drawn up in place, you can access that and figure out, you know, what your next step is going to be. And then finally, you want to make sure that you're training your staff. I talked about this earlier, but you want to make sure that they are aware of these things. You know, we all know that about email scams and phishing scams and that kind of thing. Make sure everybody that works for you knows that too, because like I said, most of those data breaches start with a phish scam. So, you know, in the government, we have to do yearly updates on, you know, we take these courses on computer security and all sorts of things, ethics awareness and that kind of thing. So it's a good thing to review it maybe annually with your folks. And if you have new people coming in, review that information with them as well. All right. Again, same thing like individuals, though, the phishing scams, the urgent messages, warn them not to click on those links in the emails or texts or open attachments to emails that are unexpected. Again, just emphasize that it might take you to a site that looks familiar, but it really is part of the scam. So it's the same thing with individuals, but it's going to apply also to businesses as well. And then just like, individuals, there were the pandemic scams that were really big. Phishing email scams, again, send those to phishing@irs.gov if it's an IRS-related scam. In some cases, businesses, just like, individuals can also be victims of tax-related identity theft. They might steal enough information to file a business tax return for a refund or use other scams using the company's identity. So just kind of keep that information, in mind. Okay, so IRS is trying to take some additional steps to protect businesses from tax-related identity theft. So back about 3 years ago or so, they began masking business tax transcripts. So if you went in and requested your business transcript, they would mask the important information on there to help prevent the thieves from getting identifiable information that would allow them to file fake business returns. So when you get a transcript, only the financial entries will be fully visible. All of the other information is going to have, some masking on it. So for example, like only the first 4 letters of the first name and last name will be shown, whether it be individuals or businesses. And then also just the last 4 digits of the employer identification number will be visible. So we're trying to do everything we can to ward off bad guys from getting the information that they need. So this is kind of related to the question that was asked a little bit earlier. Some of these schemes kind of come and go, but this is one we've seen a lot of over the years, and we call it the W-2 scam. So what happens most commonly is, and a lot of times this is for a larger business, but the thief is going to pose as a high-ranking company executive, and he'll either email or call one of the payroll employees, and he's going to say, you know what, I'm at this meeting, I really need this list of all of our employees and copies of their W-2s, and I need it within the next 30 minutes. And that person is going to react to it because they don't want to let that person down. They want to make sure that they're doing the right thing. So they don't stop to question the legitimacy of it or why they might need that kind of information at what kind of meeting they're at. And a lot of times, if somebody follows through on this, does provide that information, they don't say anything to anybody. So businesses really don't always know that they've been scammed until a fraudulent return shows up in their employees' names. And I've gotten a phone call like that from people who are in business saying, my employees are getting rejected e-filed returns because it's saying that somebody's already filed in their name. And that's usually a good sign that somebody provided that information to a scammer. Now, there is a special reporting procedure for employers who experience this kind of scam, but you can find that at the Identity Theft Central Business section on irs.gov, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here shortly. But if you do find that you are a victim of tax-related identity theft as a business, you would file the form 14039B. The 14039 is for individuals, the 14039B is for business, and it kind of gives you, some indicators on if you think you might have been a victim of tax-related identity theft. You can find more information about this at Identity Theft Central, again, in their business section. But if you file this form, it's going to allow IRS to respond to the business much faster than in the past. And then they can work to resolve the issues that are created by that fraudulent tax return. Let's see here. Next. Oop, I think all right, sorry about that. I skipped a slide. So again, make sure that you're keeping your information about your EIN current as well as your address. You can use the Form 8822B to report the change of address or a change of responsible party. And a responsible party is the person who ultimately owns or controls the entity. That responsible party has to be an individual, it can't be an entity. But just a reminder, if you do have a change in a responsible party, it does have to be reported to the IRS within 60 days. But you want to make sure that you're keeping that information current so that IRS has a point of contact to resolve any identity theft or any other kinds of issues. All right, so this next slide is going to show you just what that Identity Theft Central page looks like. You can find this page going to irs.gov, entering the phrase Identity Theft Central in the search box up there in the upper right-hand corner. You can find the information for individuals there, resources for businesses. So this stuff can help you avoid becoming a victim of ID theft and can also help you if you do become a victim. And hopefully you won't, because if you put all this stuff into action, then you should be good. And then just some reminders here. So I mentioned before, IRS doesn't initiate contact with taxpayers by email, text message, social media. We do initiate most of our contact through regular mail delivered by the post office. There are a few circumstances where the IRS might call or come to a home or business, but even in those situations, you will generally have received some letters or notices from the IRS in the mail before you're contacted. Now, whether you open that envelope or not, that's a different story. I think a lot of people think that it'll go away. Also, the IRS is not going to threaten to bring in the local police, immigration, anybody to have you arrested. The IRS can't revoke your driver's license, your business license, immigration status. These threats are really common tactics used by scam artists to trick people. And then IRS is never going to ask you to make a payment using a prepaid debit card, a gift card, or a wire transfer. And then we'll never call or email you asking for your user ID or passwords. So if you keep all that in mind, apply for your IP PIN, look at all of the common scams, the dirty dozen, everything like that should hopefully keep you very, very safe. So are there any other questions for me?
It looks like we don't have any questions right now. We just have a few questions about whether this recording will be available later. And yes, it will be sent to everyone. And it'll be posted to our YouTube channel, but we'll go a little bit over that at the end. Does anyone else have any questions for Lisa?
And you have my email address. So, you know, if you think of questions or weren't able to get it through right now, feel free to email me.
All right, great. Thank you, Lisa. I see we're almost at the top of the hour. Thank you for sharing all of that information. I know that all of that can feel very overwhelming. Lisa shared a lot of resources and links. You will be receiving a follow-up email from us. First of all, asking for your feedback on our session today, but we'll also just summarize in a nice old tidy list for all of you attending today, some of these links that Lisa had referred to, like the FTC and the IRS identity theft page. We'll also include in that a couple of additional SBDC resources. We've had some cybersecurity sessions in 2023 that you might also find of value, just to continue learning about how to protect yourself and your business from cybersecurity threats and attacks. So just to finish us off today, again, that small business development centers are located, we're actually a national organization, but we're located across Arizona here in the state. So if you are a small business and you do need some help, whether you're starting out, growing that business in that first year, really looking to grow that sustainable business, we have resources to help you in any business development area. You see the locations located here. The process is very easy to request one-on-one confidential, and again, no fee counseling. The address is shown there at azsbdc.net. If you go to that main web page, you will be able to locate the center nearest to you and then be directed to a link where you can request counseling services. And we are, let me just go to the next slide here. And here again, to request no fee counseling. Also check out, if you go to our webpage, check out those future training programs. All of our centers across Arizona provide both webinar and in-person training. So check out future training programs and hope to see you at those. And you can connect with us on those social media channels. Again, please respond to the follow-up email that you'll receive asking for feedback on our session. We'd love to hear from you about what you thought of this session and other topics of interest to you and your business. And before we close out, there may be a few additional questions here. Let's check in on those. I think we've got it. All right. Esmeralda, did I miss anything?
No, you got it all covered.
Right.
Thank you, Paula.
Okay. Thank you again, Lisa, for joining us today and sharing all of this important information. And we hope to see the rest of you at future trainings.